Spent. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first, so let's get started. Justin myself there real quick. So we all know, like, just some of this stuff is easy. You can't fit, social media only gives you X amount of words for a post or a tweet, a caption. You only get X amount of words. And so we all try to sit there and be as clever as we can in however many words or less. And we know that's not real life, at least most of us. You can't fit most things into a box and go, I can totally explain this entire situation in 90 words or less, X amount of captions or less. Last night, the Chiefs-Chargers game was a perfect example of why the Chiefs are single-handedly, they might be the best team in the NFL, but they are easily the most frustrating to watch. Listen, there's people on TV, and they need to really give me an answer on this. I've seen this narrative pop up the last few weeks about the Chiefs, which is clearly they're better than everyone. Clearly they're the best team in the league, and clearly they just know how to win, and that upsets other fan bases. And while these individual statements could be true in a tweet or a caption, they're not true if you take the big picture. Because I would ask them, if they're clearly better than everybody, why are you tied with the Carolina Panthers just 3 weeks ago? With a minute to go, need a game-winning field goal. Why do you need the Raiders to muff a punt or muff a snap to beat them on Black Friday? If you're so much better than everybody, why do you need this last-minute blocked field goal to beat the Denver Broncos? You're just clearly better than everybody. And then it crescendoed last night. They just better than everybody. They know how to win. That's been the other thing. They know how to win. They just win games. Mahomes, Reed, it's what they do. So last night, they win the game, doinked field goal goes in. So you're telling me then, they know how to win so well that they decided their kicker should kick the ball and be so off from actually making the field goal to let it doink in? That's knowing how to win? That's just being better than the other team? Now, this is why I say it's frustrating. It's frustrating if you watch the NFL, you watch the Chiefs, and realistically, if I was a Chiefs fan, I would be frustrated. Hell, their quarterback is. And that's because you saw both sides of the Chiefs. And in a tweet or a caption, we can't quite get the whole message out. But this is the message of the Kansas City Chiefs. They are lucky. They do get and have received the benefit of multiple situations this year that have been exceptionally fortunate in their favor. They are also clearly at any given moment the best team in the NFL. The last two plays of last night's game was the perfect example of what the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs are. Third down, Mahomes, misdirection, which is part of the unique play calling of Andy Reid, the best play caller in the NFL. You got Mahomes running around, extending the play, and him shaking off a would-be tackler, avoiding a sack, and throwing to Travis Kelce. That is what Mahomes has been more famous for than any other thing. You don't really need to see stats for Mahomes to prove his brilliance. You don't really need numbers to prove his brilliance. You don't even need accomplishments. The amount of times in a game since the start of his career that he's made that kind of play. Make someone miss, extend the play, find the open receiver, most times Travis Kelce, and just breaks the other team will on third down. That's the Kansas City Chiefs. They're the best team in the NFL. Because in these close games, they know how to win. You know what that doesn't look like? That doesn't look like botched snap against the Raiders. That doesn't look like blocked field goal against the Broncos. That doesn't look like tied with Carolina with a minute to go. That doesn't look like last night with a doinked kick. Yes, if I just need to make a video, or I need to make a post, or I need to make a tweet, or I need to prove a point, yeah, the Chiefs are just lucky. Trust me, I'm Chiefs hater number one. I've said it a bunch. But the reality is last night, what we saw were both aspects of what makes the Chiefs dangerous. They have been, and on the right side of a bunch of lucky / variance is a word I use a lot lately. They've been on the good they've been on the good side of variance during this stretch. They are also, at any given time, between the best quarterback in football, the best play caller in football, and a tight end who's no longer in his prime but still has chemistry of a relationship that used to be the best in football. They can do that on third down. Do they get the benefit of the doubt? Yes, they 1,000% have this year, and more so, especially consecutively, than any team in recent memory. They can also snatch your soul on third down, which is what Mahomes has been most famous and his biggest accomplishments throughout his career in an individual game. That's what makes the Chiefs dangerous. And what makes this team, if we just want to be honest, maybe they are going to go down as the luckiest Super Bowl champion of all time. But guess what that means? They'd be the Super Bowl champion. The reality with this year's Kansas City Chiefs is they might just have both. They might be the luckiest team ever, or in the running or conversation for it. They also have that. This is the first time I've looked at the Chiefs, that play specifically, against a division rival who knows you and plays you close, another great head coach, another great defense. Those are the things that you're going to want and need to beat the Chiefs come the playoffs. You're going to want someone like Jim Harbaugh. You're going to want a top 5 defense like the Chargers. And you're going to want another guy who, we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but a guy in Justin Herbert whose talent is 1,000% top 5 worthy. Those are all the things you want against Kansas City. You want the pass rush. You want to keep hitting Mahomes. You want the other star. You want a star quarterback of your own to compete with him. You want a great defense to compete with theirs. And all that being said, when it came down to it, the Chiefs got the best of both worlds. They got the brilliant play call with their best players, and they got the luck of the bounce on the field goal. That's who the Chiefs are. Potentially the luckiest Super Bowl winner of my lifetime. But that means you're still the Super Bowl winner. Let's move on from Kansas City to kids or parents out there. If you are watching, you are listening, don't waste time with the basketball. Don't waste time trying to go have your kid play football. Too many injuries, too much stuff going on. Teach your kid to either hit or throw a baseball. Juan Soto signs 15 years, $760 million, the largest contract in professional sports with the New York Mets. 15 years, $760 million. Now, we're going to talk with Tony about this a little bit later, but this is insane to me. Not just for the fact of, is it too much money to give an athlete? No, because the Mets are going to make this money back with jersey sales, ticket sales, just general media attention that also leads to sales. They're going to make their money back. And Steve Cohen's the second richest owner in all of sports, so he's not really worried about that. This really what it teaches you is, A, we have established a new bar. Remember when Mike Trout signed for $400 million? But there was a separation, like the next couple of guys, once you could call it a unicorn case or a special case, and that was Mike Trout. Mike Trout signed for $420 million, and everybody else that signed the next couple years, because we knew they weren't Mike Trout, they signed between 300, 310, 320, 315, like they were all considerably lower, like $100 million off. Then we started to build closer and closer, and that's because we had established Mike Trout was the unicorn. Mike Trout was the only guy supposed to get $400 million. And I thought the same thing about Ohtani, because when he signed for $700 million, I said, holy shit, that's a lot of money, but it's Ohtani. He's basically two players. He's a unicorn. This isn't going to happen. And then just one off season later, first chance we get at another premier free agent, $700 million. When I've been talking about, and this is good for baseball, when I've been talking about how baseball's decline, and also, I've been fair, also their resurgence, I think it is coinciding with the NBA's downfall, and contracts like this are going to have people excited. Contracts like this are how you get kids, younger people to be more invested in the sport. It's less physically taxing than playing in the NBA. Again, you got 4 at-bats. You're Juan Soto. You're an outfielder. Like, it feels like, and again, I'm not trying to dismiss baseball players or the athletes that they are, but it feels to the common man a little bit less than what having to run 35, 40 minutes in an NBA game, or obviously the contact that comes with playing professional football. Also, the security. Yes, there's no deferred money currently on Juan Soto's contract, but there's absolutely a chance for deferred money to eventually take into account. He's also got an opt-out after 5 years, which he'll be 31, and he might sign for another $500, $600, $700 million deal. And with deferred money, I think is interesting because there's always been this notion around athletes that they spend too much money, they go broke. With deferred money, it's really hard to go broke, even if you go crazy in your first couple of years, because you make this $15, $20, $30 million income a decade and a half after you've left the game with the money is now. We all know Bobby Bonilla's contract, $1 million a year. He's gotten that forever. But now these guys, like Max Scherzer's deferment is like between 10 to 15 million. Ohtani's deferment is going to be 20 to 30 million. And some of that is for tax reasons. But I get back-to-back off seasons, $700+ million prime free agent. World Series just hit its high for the last decade. There's more. Again, baseball's always had talent. That's never been baseball's issue. But now the marketing that's coming along with some of these bigger market teams, what the Mets are doing, what the Yankees are doing, what the Dodgers are doing. I said this last week. The NBA is now closer to Major League Baseball than it is the NFL. And I thought that would have been ludicrous a handful of years ago. And I didn't know if we were ever going to close that gap in that direction ever again. But I've got more money coming in. I've got more talent coming in. I've got more eyes on the game. This Juan Soto contract, I know this is supposed to be for the Mets, and this is for their fan base, and this is their moment. This, to me, is a moment for everyone in baseball to celebrate. This is a moment for everyone that's a part of or a fan of Major League Baseball to go, we're coming. And again, we're going to talk with Tony about this in a little bit in regards to, does he deserve this money? What's the projections? All that kind of stuff. But the day of celebrating, 15 years, $760 million for Juan Soto. This is not only a victory for him, not only a victory for the Mets, this is a victory for Major League Baseball. When we come back, we talked about it a little bit in the opener, but I want to have an honest conversation about Justin Herbert because I'm confused. Clearly talented, clearly great, but something just doesn't add up in my opinion. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. This is definitely a case of expectations. There is no expectation of Drake May, so we can go out there. He can throw the ball around. Even though he's throwing game-ending interceptions, it doesn't matter. Caleb Williams, who has played some of the best, worst football ever, like, he's not throwing interceptions, and so his passer rating still looks good. Some of the things that he's doing, but he's also not throwing touchdowns. He wasn't really giving the explosive plays. I understand the coaching in Chicago has been a shit show all year. They obviously they've been firing more and more people. They did retain Thomas Brown, though, to be the head coach, so we'll see where this goes. This is definitely a case of expectations. There is no expectation of Drake May, so we can go out there. He can throw the ball around. Even though he's throwing game-ending interceptions, it doesn't matter. Caleb Williams, who has played some of the best, worst football ever, like, he's not throwing interceptions, and with that, we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. So again, so we were talking about the Chiefs Charger game last night, and I'm okay being a hater. Being a hater doesn't really bother me as a fan, especially because my teams that I'm a hater of are very clear. It's division rivals, stuff like that. Sometimes conference rivals, depending on how good the team is at the moment. And I'm outright about that. But I don't hate just to hate. Justin Herbert is a guy who I don't have a hate thing for. He's just a supremely talented quarterback. He's got a rocket arm. He has everything that you would look for in a guy who's supposed to be essentially top 5 in the league, or a guy that you would want your team to have that could potentially be top 5. And yet I find myself, when you look at Justin Herbert, it's just weird. He clearly has all the talent. He clearly has the size. He clearly has the skill set. Everything about him lines up where you're like, this is the guy. This is him. He's going to take over. And yet, again, last night was kind of a Justin Herbert game. 1 to 2 touchdowns. He disappears for long stretches of time. Go back even a few weeks ago on Sunday Night Football against the Bengals. Amazing first half. Did almost nothing in the second. Last night, amazing second half. Did almost nothing in the first. Shut out in the first. Like, a guy who can show these stretches of just amazing top 3, top 5 quarterback, and then he can get shut out for a half. I'll give you another example. It's a game everybody laughed at, but the Chargers were up 20-0 against Denver. Do you remember how that final score played out? And you could say it's the running game or it's Jim Harbaugh's coaching style. The Ravens run just as much, and Lamar's got 30 touchdowns. And again, you really can't even blame Jim Harbaugh, because let's go to the one playoff game of his career. Up huge against the Jaguars. He looks amazing. The Chargers are rolling. Brandon Staley's a genius. Look at Herbert. Oh my gosh. Lose that game. Staley's fired. What's our deal with Justin Herbert? I grew up, and I'm not one of those overcritical guys who just likes to shit on every single person just to prove a point. I don't find a reason for that. But there is something telling when a guy who, yes, the talent's there, the arm talent's there, the size is there, the skill set, but how can we have such inconsistent halves? How can we have such inconsistent moments in games? Growing up, that was just called inconsistent. You could have all the tools in the world, and if you couldn't put it together consistently, hell, he can't put it together consistently for half to half, quarter to quarter. How are we supposed to, again, coming into this game, he had 13 touchdowns in 12 games. 13 touchdowns in 12 games. Name another star quarterback who that would be justified for, regardless of head coach. 13 TDs, 12 games. I'm asking. Again, Herbert should be fantastic, and at moments he is, so you know the ability is clearly there. What am I missing? Multiple coaches, still the same Herbert. Playoffs, not playoffs, still the same Herbert. Like, just I'm asking Charger fans. We're friends. We can be friendly. This is a safe place. Like, we can't just keep calling him supremely talented. Oh, he's great. At what point? Ask yourself this. At what point in your professional sports career does the product and what you've put out on the field professionally overweigh what you did in college? Because in college, he was considered a great talent, went obviously in the first round. In college, we knew rocket arm, smart kid, all this stuff. Then he gets drafted, and out the gates is amazing. Before anyone really has film on him, out the gates amazing. Again, that speaks to that instant quick success. It speaks to the inherent talent and physical ability that he possesses. But since then, are we seeing a situation in which that was actually just like, we've seen already what Justin Herbert is, and he really hasn't got better? He came into the league as like an AA- quarterback, and he's just continued to be an AA- quarterback. He came in the league with obvious inconsistencies that most young guys have, and he's just continuing to have the inconsistencies that most young guys have. Again, Trevor Lawrence, people don't like Trevor Lawrence was a generational prospect. And I understand Herbert was never considered generational. I get that. There's a difference. But at what point do we, almost everyone has came to the consensus, Trevor Lawrence is not the player we thought he was going to be. When are we going to have that conversation with Justin Herbert? Who, by the way, Trevor Lawrence beat in a playoff game. Asking for a friend. And with that, we are joined by the richest man y'all never meet and my co-host on the Group Chat podcast. Tony's in the building. How we doing?
What's up, man?
Bye weeks are so much less stressful on the soul. It's a wonderful time. You just watch football and not have to worry about your team fucking it up. So we normally always talk about
In theory.
In theory. The Chiefs, man, look, we'll get to the Chiefs in a second. I want to start, obviously, respect your college opinion more than my own. Been a lot of talk last 24 hours. College football playoff bracket has come out, and I've heard from a lot of people, ESPN FS1, there's been a lot of issues with the placement, where the seating fell in. Where do you fall in as far as you think the committee did a good job, bad job, and who would be your favorite as of today?
No, they did a good job, funny enough. So especially for this to be the first version of this expanded playoff. The teams that should have made it. You can argue strength of schedule and resume and blah blah blah, but the teams that made it beat the teams that were on their schedule, and they lost fewer games compared to the teams that didn't make it. And when you look at it all, you say, hey, SMU absolutely should have got in over Bama. Like, I feel like anybody who doesn't think that is an Alabama fan or just somebody that's in it for the names and not the actual play. This Bama team was not that good. They lost some inexcusable games. The Vanderbilt game, cannot lose that game. Cannot lose that Oklahoma game to this Oklahoma team that's just downright not good. Yeah, like they put themselves in that situation. For me, I looked at it and I said, if I'm Ole Miss or if I'm Miami, I'm more so upset at myself because, if I'm Ole Miss, I blow the Kentucky game at home, I blow the LSU game, I blow the Florida game, all games where I had the lead late or where I had just had the better team going into it and I had a chance to win. Or if you're Miami and you lose to what they lose to? They lost to Syracuse. You lose to Syracuse the week before the conference championship game. Like, you just can't do that. And so I look at it, and I think the committee did a fine job in picking the 12 teams that they selected. And if you're a few other teams that got left out, you gotta be beating yourself up. You cannot look for the committee to bail you out from your mediocrity.
Valid. And who's your title favorite to start?
Oregon. I don't see none of these teams beating Oregon. If I'm being real, I just don't see it. I think if Carson Beck, I don't know his health situation. If he can go for Georgia, because I think Oregon and Georgia are on the collision course right now. Georgia has not played in a sense, to the Georgia standard that we're used to over the last few years. But I just think that they have the best coach in all of this, in Kirby. They come in pound for pound with some of the best talent. So I think Oregon and Georgia are on a collision course, but I don't see anybody being able to beat this Oregon team because they're probably the only team in this that can play any style of football you want to play. If you want to air it out, we can air it out. If you want to run it all day, we can run it. If you want to make it sloppy and make this 14-10, we can play that game too. They're well rounded. They got the quarterback. The defense is really good. They historically can always run the ball. So I don't see any of these teams beating Oregon.
That's crazy. Oregon that good after losing a franchise quarterback. It's wild out here. So transitioning now to the NFL.
I'm good. I'm not.
Transitioning to the NFL, I started to show off today with Chiefs fans and Chief defenders in media. You got to pick a stance because there's a lot of people that are on the side of the fence of, well, the Chiefs just know how to win. Oh, they're just clearly better than every team in the NFL. You got to pick a side, which is you can't believe they're significantly better than everyone and yet play the Panthers to within a 5-point game tied with a minute to go. You can't say they're overwhelmingly the favorite. Just again, the resume is the resume, but the resume is for teams that don't currently exist, like the 23 version, the 22 version. Or you have to acknowledge at some point, this is the way we looked at the Eagles last year when they were 10-1, but it just didn't feel quite right. This is the last year or second to last year, a big bench career when the Steelers were 11-0, but no one took those teams as viable Super Bowl contenders. Mahomes is obviously Mahomes. Reed is obviously Reed. I think the biggest kept secret in the world is everybody has seen Travis Kelce's decline, and because stats of a tight end and offense, we've seen that. I don't think people have paid enough attention to Chris Jones is not the Chris Jones he's been the last 4 or 5 years. Where do you stand on the Chiefs week 14? They're 12-1. Where do you stand on them about to head into the playoffs? Do you think they are to be respected as one of the best teams in the NFL or the best team? Or are we all just convinced every other fucking team loses that game when you doink it off the fucking upright?
That was outrageous. That's not outrageous.
They did that, and then people came on TV this morning and had the audacity to say they just find ways to win. I'm like, so you're telling me the kicker kicked so badly that he was like, I'm gonna aim for the part where this is a miss 90+% of the time, but that's just knowing how to win. Anyway, your go, bro. What are the Chiefs?
Interesting stat I saw last night on Twitter, and I'm sorry for who it belongs to, but if anybody that is listening comes across it, this is where I got it from. So the Chiefs are 5-0 in the last 5 weeks, and in those 5 games, the team with the ball last had the chance to go down and kick the game-winning field goal. The Chiefs were, I think they had the ball or were on the other side of the ball like 3 of those times. So like they're not only getting the makes, but they're getting the misses too, and that's very funny to me. I think going into the playoffs as we approach about 4 games left, you got to respect them as one of the best teams because they're winning these games. You don't have to respect them as the best team because they're clearly not the best team. Like they're probably not the second best team. So like, as 2-time defending champs with the best quarterback, the best quarterback we got in the game today, at least from a resume standpoint, they deserve that. They're owed that. I think going into this playoffs, I'll probably still have them at the top because, like, shit, they have not shown that they're going to lose these games. And if it comes down to them or Buffalo, if it comes down to them or the Ravens or, the Chargers or something like that, or the Steelers, if it comes down to them versus these teams, it's like, who has the guy that's going to make the least mistakes? They do. Who has the coach that is going to make the least mistakes from an adjustment standpoint? They do. Who has more luck? Probably them. It's probably much more closer. It's much more closer when it comes to them and the Steelers, but they have 2 of the 3, so they can get away with it there. But we just have to. We'll have a chance to see all of this play out. Those people that feel like the Chiefs just know how to win and they just get it done. Sure, whatever. But if you feel if you feel as though this is luck and it has to run out at some point, sure. Maybe it just
Yeah.
don't. Maybe it just don't. Maybe they just get lucky to a three-peat. Like we don't know, but we'll be able to see it. But I think with this, we don't have to like overreact and say, "Oh, the Chiefs are just the best and they just know how to win and they can do no wrong." And we don't have to say, "Oh, this is a fraud team can't that's just lucking this all out and this shit is a fluke." Like it's somewhere in the middle. It is somewhere in the middle. The
No.
defense is not what we thought it would be coming into the season. It isn't as dominant if you look at the kind of underlying numbers, but
Mm-hmm.
they're holding teams. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're not allowing explosive plays. They're not putting their kind of limited, not even counted. They're not putting their limited offense in a situation where they got to go out there and put up 35, 40 points.
Mm-hmm.
The offense is making plays when they're supposed to make the plays. That's the name of the game, is to win at the end of the day. But if you were to ask me now, where would I put this team as we head into the playoffs? I would still have to put them at the top because they have given no reason to feel like they can't still win a title.
No, it's valid. I think if the rest of the season didn't exist, and I know this
And
is
that and before you go, bro, they're on their third kicker.
no, Chris Collinsworth did everything to jinx him. He was like, look, they're on the third kicker. Look, I saw him pregame. It was kind of funny. Bro brought up 30 seconds for the kick. He's like, hey, yo, do you know they didn't sod the field today? And I'm like, why do you know? Any other team that is announcer jinx, all this stuff. I think what made last night interesting is to give the Chiefs some credit. And I said this earlier. It was both parts. So that 3rd and 7 throw to Kelsey, that's the team you're scared of. That's the team that just keeps making plays, breaks the defense back, whatever analogy you want to use. And you know that exists as long as Mahomes and Reed are together. And Kelsey, while he's not who he's been, that chemistry still counts or something. But then you have like the field goal the way it went in. And because we have the rest of the season, like at some point this starts to turn over. Variance just doesn't work this way for one team forever. A few more things here before you get you out. You were right. I've lived in some fear for the last 2 weeks that the Red Sox are going to pull together some money and offer Juan Soto a real contract. I'm now convinced. I believe everything I saw online, which is they offered him 15 years, 50 million, and just said, "All right, let's see what happens."
LOL.
Juan Soto signs with the Mets, 15 years, $750 million. Two questions, I guess. A, if you were him, would you have gone from New York to New York? And B,
765 to be exact.
yeah. And do you think, we talked about this with somebody yesterday, is this like this $700 million number, which I was under the impression like Shohei got it because he is this unicorn of a player. He plays both ways. Is this now the new number for just the best free agent, age being, obviously age is a factor, but age being allowed? Is this just now we're going to start seeing more 600, $700 million deals?
This the new number if you look the part. And when I say if you look the part, he looks the part. 6'4", 6'5", 40 home runs, stepping out of bid, all-star, Silver Slugger guy, MVP guy. Like, he looks the part. This isn't the norm. If like you're not going to be the 5'11" shortstop that hits 25 home runs that gets this deal.
Mhm.
That's not going to happen. Now, if you're the 6'2", 6'3" shortstop with the Gold Glove that hits 35, 40 home runs, gives you some of the best defense, so on and so on, then you can step into these rooms and have these $600 million plus conversations.
Tulowitzki
I
played
knew
10 years
that
too early.
pretty much. A
He would
lot
have
of
cleaned.
guys
He would
did,
have
to be
cleaned
fair.
up. He would have
A
cleaned
lot of guys
up.
did, to be fair. But
Hmm.
I honestly, because I said that they wouldn't get him because he was going to push upwards of 7. They
Hmm.
wouldn't get into that range with him. Now, reports and whatnot say like they offer 7. Cool. Maybe, like, I guess. But they shouldn't have given him that much money. So it's like it's not a situation of like I feel like, oh, they didn't do enough to get Juan Soto. It's like they weren't going to do enough to get Juan Soto because it was going to be too much to get Juan Soto. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Juan Soto does not make the Red Sox a World Series team tomorrow. I'm sorry, he just does not. They don't have pitching. They don't have arms. They don't have a reliable number one starter. They have guys that they feel could be that cool, but they don't have. They don't have that. Maybe Max Fried, Corbin Burns could change that, but we don't know if that's going to happen. I probably wouldn't put my money on that happening either. But I say all of that to say this is the new norm if you fit that mold of player. This was too much for Juan Soto. Job well done to him. The Mets probably will not regret this because they'll make this money back three
Oh
times
yeah.
over with what he's going to bring to Citi Field and the success that they'll have with Lindor and their other young guys. Baseball is a weird sport. We're probably going to start seeing a shift in things based on this contract, what the Dodgers are doing, blah, blah, blah. You're going to see a lot more fight from owners to not have these things happen. Will they win? Probably not. Probably not. They
That's
probably won't
yeah.
win. They probably won't win. But there'll be much more of a fight and a pull and tug to avoid 800 guaranteed, 900 guaranteed. Because when you hit that B, which we are about two generational players away from, you hit that
Yeah.
B, that not only affects this sport, but every other sport. And it's going to change a lot of shit.
That's a fact. Like it's crazy. Like the numbers. Like Juan Soto's contract is more than like any sports franchise sold for prior to 10 years ago. Like it's insane. Like how like they brought up like Robert Kraft bought the Patriots for like 175 million dollars, and it's like, and this now you got a baseball player making 750. By the way, parents, teach your kids throw fucking baseball. Like I know it looks cool, basketball, love football, but man, like you can't argue the results of like all like the biggest baseball contracts dwarf NBA money, NFL money. Like
And
Andrew,
be and before we get out of here, he has the opt out after 5.
that's
But if
crazy.
he stays
He gets
4
more.
million to the average,
Yep.
$800 million contract.
That's insane. Really quick here, Ed. We got 2 minutes. Is obviously the Ravens on a bye week, so Chargers, Ravens, Broncos, all 5, 6, 7. The difference right now is it's tiebreaker, so the Ravens are the 5s right now, except people with Chargers and Denver. Not a comparison, but what is your expectation for Baltimore these last 4 games coming out of the bye?
Uh, just just establish an identity. What do you want to be going into the playoffs? Because you're going to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What type of team do you want to be? Um, Offensively, are you going to do you want to try to maintain this balance? Do you want to lean heavy into the run as you should? Are you going to continue to just be this up and down team? Defensively, are you just going to keep turning the corner? Continue to turn the corner as you get guys back. Health gets better for you. That's the benefit of the late buy. As much as it sucks, it does help in that sense. So,
Mm-hmm.
can the defense keep turning the corner? Just establish consistency. They'll probably finish 3-1 in these last 4 games. I don't know which one they'll lose. I don't know which ones they'll win. They'll probably finish 3-1. Just show some consistency and get into a groove as we head into January.
No, 1,000%. 7 lab teams in the AFC are pretty much guaranteed unless someone just totally falls apart and Miami keeps up the winning streak. But appreciate you, man. As always, don't forget to check them out on the Group Chat Podcast. We'll see you next week, bro.
Peace.
you want to go the God route, you want to make it DBZ, fine. I don't think that's very interesting.
No, I agree.
And I think that like you can do these crazy like I think one of the things people hoped for with Boruto, and it was when we went to go see that movie years ago, and it's when we got like the manga announced and when they announced the show and everything.
hmm
And the hope was that it would go back to the roots of what made Naruto popular.
hmm
I just think the creators didn't understand what made Naruto good. For us,
No,
there's
I
gonna
agree.
be an audience of people that want ass kicking. I just don't think it's the fun. Like, I don't think that's fun. Oh,
It
wow, Boruto has hands. And I'm like, me too, man. Like, I don't know. Like, like you want
And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Really quick before we get to the second hour. Yes, the goal is, by the way, to start doing 2-hour shows every single day. Well, not every single day, but the Sunday through Thursday, or Sunday through Wednesday. I've got to give a slightly different schedule only because I'm trying to get group chat and A&M, also time to breathe. And trying to run 3 channels is just tough. So deal with it. Have some patience. That's the better way to ask it. Sean McVay is a really, really good football coach. Not just really good. He is about to ascend to that next level. And we a lot of times don't give people like we let me rephrase this. We either normally give somebody immediately next level status, like we put them way higher than they should be, or we never really give them that because of this perpetual fear or stigma or whatever it is. But Sean McVay is already in the one of the greatest head coaches to ever coach, and I don't really care if his accolades aren't quite there or not. This is one of the best head coaches in the history of the NFL. That game yesterday, now mind you, the Rams have been dealing with, and I know they're not in the playoffs right this second, but I think they're better than Seattle. I think they're going to catch Seattle. The Rams dealt with horrific injuries to start this season. Most teams would fail under the circumstances the Rams started the season with. You start the season out with the Lions. You get a heartbreaking loss in that fashion. You deal with several injuries to quarterback, receivers, etc. Your defense is a bunch of young guys. These are all things that lead to cratering out a season. Just see, like, there's multiple. Like, look at the Jets. The Jets would tell you, well, we fired our head coach. We've had injuries. We've had underperforming, all that stuff, and look how their season's going. And yet the Rams just keep trucking along. And that game yesterday, I don't care about the games you're supposed to win. That's why you're paid. And that's why you're compensated quite well. But those games that you're not supposed to win because you're down your best 2 receivers, like against the 49ers. That game yesterday that you're not supposed to win because Josh Allen is a force of nature and has 6 touchdowns. Sean McVay is one of the best head coaches in the history of the NFL, and you can't convince me otherwise. How many other coaches in the league win the Niners game when they're down Puka and Cooper, and how many other head coaches in the NFL win that game when Josh Allen goes for 6 touchdowns? The list is really, really small. We acknowledge the guys who have proven stats. We acknowledge Andy Reid, even though Andy Reid's offense the last 2 years has not been that great. We acknowledge Bill Belichick, even though he had years where his defense wasn't that great. And those are their sides of the ball. Sean McVay is dealing with multiple injuries, older quarterback, young defense, everything that just signals bad year. And look what he's doing. That's one of the best head coaches to ever coach. And I don't think there's enough credit given to that. And I think we need to be more appreciative of, like, we are witnessing greatness, even though it's in this, unfortunately, just era of we've anointed Shanahan, I do think correctly so, because he's been to multiple Super Bowls, been to multiple NFC Championship games. Oh, by the way, Sean McVay owns him. We've anointed Reid because Reid and Mahomes, they're winning all the Super Bowls, and we should. But Reid's not dealing. We saw Reid when he didn't have Mahomes. We've seen Andy Reid when he doesn't have star players on defense. Sean McVay is dealing young defense, really good quarterback, but not one of the superhumans, dealing with injuries everywhere, and just survived a 6-touchdown game from Josh Allen. That's one of the best head coaches ever. You can't convince me otherwise. When we come back to start hour 2, Dion wants both sons to go to Vegas. We discuss. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio, start of hour 2. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's smile for everybody. Smiling time. So, I want to discuss this. Deion Sanders over the weekend or at an event went to Antonio Pierce. They were both at the event, and Deion basically said, make sure you draft those Sanders boys. So there's clearly right now one of the worst kept secrets in America is Deion Sanders, Shadeur Sanders. However it falls, I don't think Deion's being totally overly controlling dad and just saying, no, you guys are going here. I think this has been conversations he's had with them, and they like to end up here. Also, shout out to you that have those of you that have mock drafts with Shiloh Sanders going in the second round. He's definitely not going that high. And if you think the backlash of Bo Nix to Denver at 12 was crazy, just wait until if Shiloh Sanders makes to the second round. But this I thought was interesting. And this is Deion, and I have no reason to not believe him, but I love this approach. Deion tweeted out today. This is in regards to the transfer portal. Make sure you know the difference between a bag and a blessing. And I thought this was really interesting to me. You can go get paid anywhere. This is the reality. You can go, it's not even just in professional sports. You could go get a job essentially anywhere in life. And you'll get paid, you'll get some benefits, whatever is agreed upon with the position you take. But most of us, after we get past that initial paycheck, and once you're comfortable with what you're paid, and then you're just expected of what's your benefits, we start to detest some of these jobs. We don't like an owner. We don't like a coworker. A lot of us get jobs, and we don't even like the job. And that's what Deion doesn't want to happen with recruits on a college level going to different programs, and what he doesn't want for his own kids going to the NFL. Because if I were to just lay it out and tell you, what's the perks of going to the Raiders? An owner who has finally, after years, passed the Cincinnati Bengals and went from second to last place to third to last place in terms of richest owners. Last place is a technicality because the Packers don't have an owner. Why would I want him in the AFC West? Let's just look at coaches. Andy Reid, probably the best head coach in football. Jim Harbaugh, you could argue the best football coach on the planet with success both collegiately and in the pros. Sean Payton, Super Bowl winner. Look what he's doing this year with Denver. That's 3 of, in my opinion, the 5 or 6 best head coaches in the NFL, and there's an argument you could make they're the 3 best. Why would I want to go there if I was Shadeur? And that's because Deion, with all of these things, you could go to a situation that's going to pay you the same. You could go to a situation that's going to give you the same benefits. But you could, the same way any other person could hate their job, you could grow to hate that. This is not running from a challenge. Like, I think this is totally the opposite of what the very famous Archie Manning did with Eli. I think he thought the Chargers were too big of a dysfunction for Eli to overcome. So he said, hey, we're going to go over there. We're going to go to the Giants who have history, good ownership, etc. Deion's not banking on great ownership. Deion's not banking on a proven head coach, even though I like Antonio Pierce. He's not banking on overwhelming talent on the roster. But there's something Deion just knows. And again, when you are extremely successful at one thing in life, I believe this wholeheartedly. If you're extremely successful at one thing in life, that could be solely off talent. Deion was super successful as an NFL player, the greatest corner of all time. That's talent. Deion went into media, and he was great on the show. Him, Shannon, LT, used to be on NFL Network. He was fantastic at that. That's work ethic. That's acquired skills. That is taught. That's not inherent. Then Deion went and became a coach. And in just a few years has turned, not only did he get Jackson State to prominence as an HBCU, now what he's doing in Colorado. That is skills. That is work. That is nothing. Deion has done this. And so he's looking around and he's seeing, what's the place I want Shadeur to go to? And again, there's no real, I wish I had some really clever or really, oh, I'm so smart, that's why you should listen to me, theory or idea about why this is absolutely going to work. But I don't know it because I'm not Deion Sanders. I just have proof of concept of Deion being successful in everything he's done. And once you get past the NFL part, the rest of it we can't just call talent. The talent got him in the NFL. His skill and his work ethic and his knowledge, that got him to be good in media. His skill, his work ethic, and his knowledge, that got him to be a good head coach at 2 separate programs. This is just facts. I'm just laying out what I've seen him do. And so if he's looking at the Las Vegas Raiders and he's looking at Antonio Pierce and he's looking at that ownership group and he's saying, that's where I want my son to go, this feels different than when LeVar Ball came out and said, I want all 3 of my boys to play together. I want LaMelo over here. I want Lonzo to go to the Lakers. I want LiAngelo over here. Like, that would just felt like we're talented and we have a brand. And I'm going to just throw this out there, and I'm hoping this works. I don't have any reason. Now, LeVar Ball is a dad, hell of an accomplishment. And I've always pushed back people that say, oh, it's not that impressive what he did. If you have 3 sons, 2 of the 3 make it to the NBA, I don't care what they've done. And really, you could argue 3 if you want to count the G League and practice squad and stuff like that. You put 3 sons in the NBA. You have 3 sons with some very, very good net worths. You got 2 of them that got paid by the NBA. That is a hell of a job as a dad. So I don't want to discredit that from LeVar. But the process of what LeVar did, I had no proof of concept that LeVar was going to be great at this and great at that. We've seen what he tried to do with the shoes. And if the shoes had worked, I'd give him the exact same compliments I give to Deion. If the shoes had worked and the media had worked and the marketing worked, if there was several facets of his life, and I'm sure there is, we just can't see all of them, but I've seen it with Deion. It's public information. It's known. If I can see all of that stuff and see how successful he was here, see how successful he was there, see how successful he was there, why would I not trust him when it comes to where my son should play, where my son should be drafted? Again, nothing else about it makes sense. Nothing. Nothing else about telling, hey, I want my son to go play in a division with 3 great head coaches. I want my son to go play in a division with the best quarterback in the NFL. Hey, I want my son to go play in a division where they're going to have the poorest ownership group by a mile. But there's proof of concept. Deion's been successful at so many things. How am I going to sit there and doubt him and say, you don't know what you're doing? You clearly do. And only so much of it can be talent. Another guy who I gave Sean McVay some love to end last hour, and I've been really fixated on this concept for the last couple of weeks. We all know when someone is bad at their job. And we all know when someone is great at their job. And bad's the wrong word. We know when someone's terrible, and we know when someone's terrific. Let's use both T's. Let's keep it cute. Someone's terrible at their job, and we'll keep it in the realm of NFL head coaching. Nathaniel Hackett, after 1 game, even though I was in denial at the time, was terrible at his job of being an NFL head coach. He was. And it was so evident for people to see. Again, I was in denial. That's my fandom. It happens. And then we know when people are terrific at their job. Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, Sean McVay. It's easy to see. Kyle Shanahan. It's easy to see when someone's terrific at their job. Results, accolades, all that stuff starts to pile up. It's really hard to get someone right before everybody else figures them out. And when it comes to coaching, and really in any sport, but especially in the NFL, because the normal process is you become a new head coach, you have a bad team. Because the previous guy got fired. And a part of a team firing their head coach, roster getting broken down, guys get traded, bad seasons, contracts, etc. You're on a bad team. So figuring out who's good and who's not good, that's a skill. That's a skill for GMs. It's a skill for owners who a lot just don't have. I'm going to put on my fake GM hat And I'm going to make my pitch to the best coach no one's talking about. And that's Dave Canales down in Carolina. Carolina's got a terrible record. Carolina's not that good. How could he be the best head coach and his team's not good? Watch what his team's done. Obviously, you start off, there's a clear lack of talent on the roster. This is why they had the number 1 overall pick and they traded all those picks. We all know the horrible Bears trade, which in reality, they've won 2 more games than the Bears, or only 2 less games than the Bears since all of this trade comparison talk have happened. Let's look at Bryce Young, how he started and how he's going. He looked lost. Then he was benched. And now look at Bryce Young the last couple of weeks. That's coaching. That's teaching. You see the improvement. It's visible. We can all clearly see it. I haven't seen nearly as many short jokes about Bryce Young last couple of weeks. I saw him play really well against the Chiefs, Super Bowl defense. I saw him play really well yesterday. I've seen the last couple of weeks since coming back from being benched, Bryce Young has been a really good quarterback. That's coaching, that's teaching, that's improvement. Those are the kind of things you got to look for is when it comes to, is this the right guy? No, he doesn't have the talent to compete with Kyle Shanahan. If let's say they're equal level play callers, just a little bit less, he doesn't have the talent to compete with him. Kyle Shanahan gets to scheme up things for Debo and George Kittle, and when he's had Christian McCaffrey, we've seen how explosive that is. Andy Reid at different times, that Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, you don't have that talent yet, but you see it. Go to a better example of a team that's farther along the process, but something similar. Look what Sean Payton's doing in Denver. No one thinks Denver has great receivers. Cortland Sutton's the only receiver most people can actually even name. But what he's scheming up with Vele, you can see that and go, oh, he can do that with him. Think of what he could do when he gets more time to acquire more talent. Oh, he's scheming up things for Lucas Kroll. Okay, well, Lucas Kroll's not a household name at tight end. Look at what Canales is doing with Chuba Hubbard. Like, look at what he's doing with Adam Thielen, who, go look at Adam Thielen. Having I'm not going to say a bounce back year, but we've seen far more Adam Thielen highlights this year than last. Again, coaches need X amount of talent to get X amount of results. You're never going to see the feel-good movie story of this coach took the worst roster in the league and went all the way and won a title. That's not real. That's movies. That's fake. Look at what he's doing with this Carolina roster. That's an impressive head coach. It is what it is. When we come back, we got HardRight, HardLeft. It is Monday. And then don't forget we're going to do some Monday night check-in for that also wonderful Cowboys-Bengals game, because this is what ESPN is showing us. This is HardFoul Radio, back momentarily. I'm joined, as always, by the Father Willis in the building. How we doing, man?
Sensational.
How was drinking after 40? I hear that shit hits harder.
Yo.
Drinking after 40 is crazy. Number one, I never said I was drinking. First, I'm 32. As of like a week and a half ago. Second, I didn't even say I was drinking. I just said I was outside.
So you gonna convince everybody you was outside and had no alcoholic beverages at all?
Nah. I'm just saying I never said I was drinking. I ain't say I wasn't either.
I understand. Understandable. This nigga said in the text message before we got on this shit talking about like, yo, I'm about to have a macchiato.
I did not say I was about to have a macchiato. Tony said something about Italian, so I just know Italian style.
I heard macchiato.
No, I said you can never go wrong with a macchiato. I got regular coffee though.
All right. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. It is Monday, so that means we have to go through HardRight, HardLeft, things that I feel like I got the most wrong, things that I got the most right. We want to always end on a positive note, so let's get the wrong out of the way. I was wrong on the Atlanta Falcons. Look, I know. I thought I was, and I wasn't alone in this. I think a lot of people were on board with me. Tony and I were both on board with this. I felt, strength in numbers, groupthink, all the good stuff. But yeah, the Falcons have been a little disappointing this year. So here's the problem. This is totally a Kirk Cousins thing. This is 10,000% a Kirk Cousins thing. Kirk Cousins is just on the end of his career. Now, Kirk Cousins had a great career. Kirk Cousins has made a lot of money. Kirk Cousins has thrown for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, all these different things he's done. These are all valid. And I thought that was going to translate, even coming off the injury, that he'd have one or two more potentially good years. And then you would have, in my opinion, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, who I feel like have all lived up to their end of the deal in terms of being talented players to throw the ball to, get the ball in the hand of playmakers. I think they've done all that. The problem is Kirk, who is now over his last 4 games, 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. The Falcons are on 4, and that Charger game is horrifically bad. The throws, there's a difference in throwing an interception and then like the throws you can't make. I would rather you throw an interception because you're trying to get the ball to your number 1 wide receiver and maybe it's contested coverage, but you feel good about a 50-50 ball, but it gets picked off. Fine, we can all live with that. We all understand that. The throws he made against the Chargers are maybe the most, 3 of his interceptions are maybe the 3 most egregious throws into the season, and the most egregious throw was definitively that one into the end zone. The one he threw into the end zone is the most egregious throw of the NFL season. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's the most egregious throw in the NFL by far all year. It is so bad. You have to realize this is the same NFL in which Will Levis plays. And that was the most egregious throw. What he threw into the end zone, Chargers picked off, was insane. And again, I thought it would work. I was really high on this team. I liked all the acquisitions. I liked bringing in Judon. I liked bringing in Justin Simmons, who both admittedly definitely have lost a step and aren't the players that we thought they were going to be for this season. And that's obviously not on Kirk. But the inability of this offense to keep moving the ball, the inability of this offense to stay on the field because of the turnovers that he's throwing, you can't be exceptionally bad at too many things. You can have strengths and weaknesses. We all do. Professional athletes are no different. Kirk Cousins is not going to wow anybody with athleticism. That's not his game. He's supposed to be a smart guy, an accurate quarterback. Those are the things that he is really good at. This is bad. Because he's not just not wowing you with athleticism anymore. He is now officially the most statuesque quarterback in the NFL. By the way, Matthew Stafford, who is also not an insane athlete, but at least he is accurate from the pocket. He's got a cannon arm. Like, Kirk, you can't be so bad you make the other non-athletic guys look athletic. Matthew Stafford can still go to his left or his right. Joe Burrow, who's another guy who's not considered a super athlete, he can still move around in the pocket. I understand we don't have a lot of pure pocket passers left, But Kirk is a statue in the pocket. He can't move. So now you're adding more pressure to his offensive line. And maybe this is somewhat injury. And so maybe if you're the Falcons, I don't know if you can really hope for anything else, but that you hope that this gets better next year, because you did pay Kirk a lot of money. And I don't think you wanted to pay him $90 million essentially to only play the 1 year. That's how it would break out if they wanted to try to get away from move on to Penix. But man, this is the Falcons team that I was really, really high on to start the season. I thought they were going to be better than the Bucs. I thought the Bucs were going to come down to earth. And the Bucs did. That's the problem. They beat Tampa Bay twice. Tampa Bay went on a little bit of a losing streak. And that was the time to seize the division. If you just go 2-2 in that stretch, you still give yourself not only a multiple game lead, but you have the tiebreaker without question because you beat Tampa twice. Instead, Tampa goes on its biggest losing streak of the season, and you basically bail them out by going 0-4 yourself. Again, Kirk, you can't be this bad at the things you're already not good at. You can't be, generally speaking, you can't be the worst of something in your sport and expect to have good results. Like you could be a bad defense. You can't be the worst defense. That's the Cincinnati Bengals. You could be a bad offense, but you can't be the worst offense. Pittsburgh, up until Russell Wilson stepped in, that was no one would tell you was a great offense. No one would tell you it was probably even a really good offense. They were just barely making it work, and they had a great defense. But you can't be the absolute worst. That's been the Steelers the last couple of years when their offense has arguably been the worst under Kenny Pickett, or the year where they went through like 3 or 4 guys due to injuries. So, I'm a man. I can take it. I will 1,000% admit when I am wrong, and I was wrong on the Atlanta Falcons, who right now wouldn't be a playoff team, and I don't think they should be a playoff team. My HardRight, though, the thing I was the most right about, now record-wise we're not there yet, but I touched on this a little bit in the last hour. The Rams are really, really good. The Rams, I said, coming into the season, that now they've obviously, unfortunately, had so many injuries that this should be the thing that the Rams should be a HardLeft, because they just had so many injuries that they were never going to be able to reach the expectations they had for them. But now, with San Francisco's injuries and San Francisco not playing well even when they've had guys healthy, Arizona's inconsistency and Kyler Murray struggles, and a Seattle team that I'm just going to be honest with you, I'm not really that convinced of. I understand Geno Smith has been playing well. I understand Mike McDonald's gotten this defense to rebound back into shape, but I just don't think they're better than the Rams, who would be leading this division if they had not dealt with, again, Sean McVay is overcoming young defense, several injuries, and a quarterback who in Matthew Staten, and I like Matt, but Matt had about a 3 to 4 game stretch where he genuinely was struggling. Doesn't have a lot of touchdowns on the season. Part of that is due to the lack of weapons and all the injuries, but McVay is getting this team, rounding them into shape. They just won a game against Josh Allen, who was on another level yesterday with the 6 touchdowns. Like, this Rams team, had they not had all of these things setting them back, super young defense, a whole bunch of injuries, really brutal schedule, this would be easily one of the best teams in the NFL. I said coming into the season, obviously the 49ers also haven't lived up to it. But the difference, in my opinion, between where the LA Rams and the San Francisco 49ers were to start the season was Aaron Donald retiring. If Aaron Donald was still on this team, he is worth an additional win or two, and that to me was going to be the difference in the division. But now since San Francisco is struggling, Arizona's been struggling, and Seattle I just don't believe in, especially as we get into this later part of the season, and they play each other one more time. This Rams team with a great head coach, with a great quarterback, both have won Super Bowls, with a defense that is starting to put itself in that conversation of like, these young guys are starting to figure it out. After about 10, 11 weeks, they're really rounding into shape. That offense is now healthier. Puka and Cooper are now playing consistently. Sean McVay is giving you some of the best schemes in the NFL. Like, this team, this is what it was supposed to look like, plus some. This is the team that was going to potentially go on a run because of all the talent they had. And that's, again, with a bunch of injuries. That is, again, with a young defense. And so, while the record is not going to be as good as I thought it initially could be, I feel super vindicated in my LA Rams pick. And you can go back and look at tweets at the beginning of the season. Tony and I, who were both high on this team, there's really a hard left and hard right for both Tony and I. We both felt the same way about both of these teams. But go back and look at it. And there were multiple times early in the season where like, yeah, the Rams are really good, but it's just a little too much on the injury front. They have battled through that. They are starting to turn the corner. This team is ready to go. This is one of the best teams in the NFL. Watch out for the LA Rams. They're coming 100 miles an hour. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. and some guys there on defense who are absolutely worth it, as well as Mike McDonald coming in from Baltimore. You have Pittsburgh, TJ Watt, that defense. The Buccaneers defense, and then you have the Jets in week 4. So 2 out of the 4, you have elite personnel defensively between Pittsburgh and New York. And then you have a potentially elite personnel and a coordinator who just got the job because of how good he did with another team and is now a head coach in Seattle. So through 4 weeks, we're going to find out what this looks like. We're going to all know what is Bo Nix by week 4. And that is a franchise quarterback. So, welcome back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. So, we're doing a little bit of Monday Night Check, and we do this every Monday where we just kind of check in on the Monday Night Football game and kind of give some quick thoughts and points on this. So, it's 10-7, and these are 2 teams, Bengals, Cowboys, who have been talked to. If you're not a fan of the individual teams, these are 2 teams that have been talked to points that are just mind-numbingly painful. The Cowboys, obviously, because of the TV draw and the ratings and how networks do this stuff, is they're like, okay, it's essentially, it works like YouTube. It's how many views, really YouTube works like the networks, but it's how many views, how many people are engaged, how many people are how many people are watching, and that's what we're going to base off of what we talk about, because we need successful numbers and people engage and be able to sell ads and all this stuff. And this has always been my hugest issue, which is, I don't want to talk about the Cowboys if they're not good. I don't want to talk about a team that isn't exciting or isn't interesting if they're not good. And I know people say, oh, but you talk about the Broncos. I'm like, yeah, I give about 10 to 15 minutes a week. I stream for 6 hours, 6 to 10 hours, realistically. I stream and I talk about the Broncos for maybe 15 minutes. And I'll use them as a reference point because I only talk about teams that I actually know what's going on. I don't go on there and try to say, oh, this is what's wrong with Team X because that's what I heard everybody else say, and I'm just going to do that same storyline because that's how media and storylines work. And so I don't give a lot of time to the Cowboys, and I never really want to be associated with the big guys, is because I don't want to be forced or told by someone, oh, you need to talk about Dallas more because Dallas gets more ratings. Or if you go look at my YouTube history, go look at all the videos. If the videos do really well, and I don't talk about said player if I don't think there's a reason to talk about them. I don't just rush to go, I haven't talked about Jokic since the Jokic video, and that one's going to do for myself, I'm small, but that one's going to do 3K in 10 days, almost 3K in 10 days. So it's that's a really good video for me. I didn't rush to go keep talking about Nikola Jokic. I didn't rush to sit there and say, yo, Denver fans are clearly more tuned in, so let me go placate to the Denver fans when I've had the Lamar videos do really well in the past. I didn't go and placate to the Baltimore fans. I talk about what I genuinely think are the interesting stories, what I genuinely think are important talking points, what I genuinely believe are real points. What I do believe is a real point, though, as a part of this Monday Night Check-In, is Chase gets another catch. There's going to be case studies on Joe Burrow because no one really knows what they're talking about when it comes to Joe Burrow, in my opinion. There's people that say, oh, well, the reason the Bengals are bad is because they just don't have anyone good on defense, or, oh, the reason the Bengals are bad is because Oregon there's a million reasons why the Bengals are bad, guys. The biggest reason why the Bengals are bad, they don't have conviction. This is why everybody in your franchise needs to have the conviction and be on the same page. Nobody knows what the hell's going on in Cincinnati because Cincinnati doesn't know what's going on. They weren't willing to commit to their big-time defenders. They let Jesse Bates walk. They weren't willing to commit to either their big-time receivers. Chase, while he probably will sign, doesn't have a deal yet. T. Higgins is most likely going to walk. There's not a direction for the franchise. And this is a franchise that got to the Super Bowl essentially off talent alone because it wasn't off organization. It wasn't off ownership. And a head coach who we like but don't love, don't really know where to place Zach Taylor. This team never wanted to commit to anything or have the conviction to say, this is what we're going to do as a franchise. We have, shout out to Carson Palmer and Boomer Esiason, but we have realistically the best quarterback in the history of our franchise. And we're not willing to commit money, or we're not willing to commit to a path, or we're not willing to commit to a direction to keep getting better and improve. What are we doing, Cincinnati? What are we doing? You have an all-time talented quarterback. And the plan is what? You have all-time talent at wide receiver. And the plan is what? Again, you need, as an organization, you need to have conviction. You need to have a direction. You need to have all these different things that play into how successful can you be? How much long-term success can you have? Can we just have an identity or a direction? Again, the Cowboys, when the Cowboys were good, Jerry, this is also to you. When the Cowboys were good, they had a direction. They had Troy Aikman, they had Mike Irvin, they had Emmitt Smith, they had an offensive line. They paid their stars, they paid their linemen. Now, it was easier back then because free agency was different, as well as linemen didn't make quite as much money. So when you had, it's why a lot of the all-time offensive lines are from older years, is because in the past, an offensive lineman, Trent Williams just signed for what, $30 million a year almost? Like, guys weren't even remotely close to that. Like, now we have decided, and I agree with it, but there's a huge market increase because we have increased the value or perceived value of offensive linemen. So now these guys are making more money than they've ever made in their lives. And so it's harder for the salary cap to keep great offensive lines together. You know, we talk about Detroit, how great their offensive line is, but that's not going to be sustainable for long periods of time just because of how much money they make. And so, but Dallas had a direction. They invested in stars, offensive line. Defense, name a great defensive player during Dallas' Super Bowl stretch in the 90s. There was one, it was Deion Sanders, who they basically brought in as a free agent and then let him walk a year later or 2 years later. Like, there was direction. And the Bengals right now, the biggest issue with the Bengals is there's no real direction here. You have all this talent, but there's no real direction. Pittsburgh doesn't have nearly as much talent as the Bengals, but they have a direction. They have an identity. They have something that they stand, like, there's philosophies in place that they believe and they stick to, and that stuff, that kind of stuff matters because that's, again, growing up as a kid, oh, it's just talent, who's exciting, all this stuff, like, but that's who actually wins long term. Conviction, direction, good ownership groups. And the Bengals just don't have that. Again, it's week 14 of the NFL season. It's year 4 of Jamar Higgins Chase. Sorry, of Jamar Higgins-Burrow. And we still don't have a direction. We still aren't guaranteed. We don't really know what we want to do long term going forward. We're just going to hope our talent bails us out. All right. I guess. So, yes, that's Monday Night Check-In. Again, Bengals, Cowboys, two teams that have been talked beyond reason, considering where they are in the standings and how productive they've been. But, yeah. So, let's close up the show with some closing thoughts. I don't know, and I'm going to talk about this a little more tomorrow. I don't know where Sam Darnold's supposed to go. I know Sam Darnold just had a great game. The Vikings are having a great season. Sam is a great story. I've talked about this before a little bit. But where is Sam Darnold supposed to go? There's people all day on TV talking about, oh, he's going to get a huge contract. Look at the way he's played. Who's going to pay him? Who's going to pay him? There's two risks to paying Sam Darnold. A, are you going, there's only one situation we've ever seen him succeed in the NFL. We've only seen him succeed with Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, Addison, the weapons, the scheme in Minnesota. That don't exist everywhere. That's not, you can't sit there and say, we're going to take Sam and we're then going to put him in this position and he's going to be just as good. Every team don't got a Justin Jefferson. In fact, only one of the team has an argument they have a Justin Jefferson equivalent, and that's the Bengals, and they got Joe Burrow. They're not going to bring him back, I would assume, because you've got to play J.J. McCarthy, right? You just spent a top 11 pick on him, so you would assume you'd have to play J.J. Darnold's not going to be nearly as successful anywhere else because he's not going to have the coach. He's not going to have the weapons. He's not going to have the best receiver in football. He's not going to have a good offensive line. Plus, a defense that has played top 10 this season, whether you think their talent is top 10 or not, statistically has played to the level of a top 10 defense. Like, this is one of those situations. Who is going to pay Sam Darnold? I have 6 years of him not being very good, and he was not able to uplift a bad franchise. So these teams in the top 10, and this is going to be one of the strangest years for quarterback. Go look at the draft order. It's going to be one of the strangest years for quarterbacks ever because the Jaguars are going to draft top 5. They're not going to draft anyone. They have Trevor Lawrence. Like, the Giants are probably going to draft a quarterback. They obviously just released Daniel Jones. And the Raiders are going to draft a quarterback. After that, New England's going to pick in the top 5. New England's not drafting another quarterback. They just got Drake May. Again, we just said the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, they're not going to draft a quarterback. Carolina's probably going to be in that range. But we've seen what Bryce Young has done these last couple of weeks. They're probably not going to draft another quarterback. So we're going to have, if Shadeur is the consensus number 1 overall pick, and then whoever you want to say is a second quarterback, like, we're going to have a bunch of teams in that top 10 who aren't going to overtrade or overpay for Sam because he's not going to have the potential that these younger guys have, even though he was a top 5 pick in his own right. And he's not going to have the situation for these teams that feel like they're close. You could feel like you're close and not have a top 10 defense, a brilliant offensive mind, and Justin Jefferson. Like, I feel bad. Like, I'm happy for Sam Darnold just in the essence of being a human being and him having success after all these years, and good for him. He deserves it. He's worked hard. He's kept himself in the league. Opportunity, boom, perfect. But where is that opportunity applicable anywhere else? Where is that opportunity going to be replicatable anywhere else? I can't send him to one of the really bad teams. He's proven he can't carry a bad team. He's proven he can't uplift a bad team. He's not going to compete with a guy who's going to have more potential, younger, and cheaper. I heard today, he's going to get a Baker Mayfield or a Geno Smith-ass contract. Who's going to pay him almost $30 million a year? Name the team. Name the team. So, yeah, man, again, congrats to Sam Darnold. He's had a great season. I've been wrong on Sam Darnold all year. Again, I've been wrong on the Vikings, essentially. I have kept them in my power rankings to a certain point because I just don't believe with Sam Darnold as your quarterback, you can be so high on a power rankings list. I've clearly been wrong. I still might not move them up on my own personal power rankings, but they've clearly been better than I've ever thought they could be at this season. But again, I ask, who's going to sign him? Where does he go? Thank you. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. I'm enjoying the 2-hour shows. It's a lot of fun. Tomorrow, the QB bar is back. Please go show that video some love on YouTube as well as TikTok. Appreciate you guys. Also, don't forget to check out on Sunday. I've been uploading at the wrong times, but A&M will be uploaded on Friday. Group chats will be uploaded on Sunday, as well as go check out those YouTube channels. Go check out the videos. Those will be dropping every other day. Ton of fun. A lot of stuff going on here at HardFoul. With that being said, this is the show that values time.